I woke up in the back seat of my Camry for the 37th morning in a row, and the thing I remember most isn't the cold or the hunger. It's how quiet the world gets when no one expects anything from you anymore. My breath fogged the glass. My knees ached from being folded against the door. Outside, the parking lot of a shuttered grocery store stretched empty under a gray sky that had no mercy and no memory. 3 months ago, I had a bed. I had a routine. I had a son. Now I had a car that smelled like sweat and regret. A duffel bag with 4 shirts, and the kind of exhaustion that sits so deep in your bones you stop noticing it. My son, Marcus, died in May. Heart attack, 34 years old. No warning. 1 minute he was coaching his daughter's soccer team, and the next he was gone, collapsed on a field full of screaming parents and confused children who didn't understand why coach wasn't getting up. I got the call from my daughter-in-law, Vanessa. She didn't cry. She just said, "He's dead, William. You need to come." I drove 4 hours. I held my granddaughter while she sobbed into my shoulder. I helped pick the casket. I stood at the funeral and said nothing because there were no words big enough. And 2 weeks later, Vanessa sat me down in the living room I used to visit every Sunday and told me I had to leave. She didn't yell. She didn't accuse. She just looked at me with eyes that had gone flat and said, "I can't have you here anymore. I need space to grieve with my daughter, and you remind me too much of him." I asked where I was supposed to go. She said, "I don't know, William, but you can't stay here." I was 68 years old. I'd been laid off from the plant 2 years before Marcus died, spent my savings trying to keep up with bills, and never imagined I'd be the kind of man who ended up sleeping in a car. But that's what happened. No family left except Vanessa and my granddaughter, and they didn't want me. No friends close enough to burden. No safety net. Just me, the Camry, and the fluorescent hum of gas station bathrooms where I washed my face every morning and avoided my own reflection. Before I continue, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. And if you enjoy stories like this, please like and subscribe. It helps me keep sharing more. I kept a notebook in the glove compartment. I don't know why. Maybe because writing things down made them feel less like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I wrote about Marcus, about the time he was 7 and caught his first fish, how he held it up with both hands like it was a trophy, grinning so wide I thought his face might split. About the last conversation we had, 3 days before he died, when he called just to say he loved me and that he was proud of the man I'd been to him. I wrote about Vanessa too, about how she used to hug me at the door every Sunday, how she called me Dad, even though I wasn't her father, how she fell apart so completely after Marcus died that I think she needed someone to blame. And I was the easiest target. I didn't hate her for it. I just wished she'd let me stay long enough to say goodbye properly. On the 37th morning, I was sitting in the driver's seat staring at the notebook when someone tapped on the window. I flinched. A woman stood outside, older than me, maybe 75, with silver hair pulled back in a bun and a wool coat buttoned to her chin. She gestured for me to roll down the window. I hesitated, then cranked it halfway. "You William?" she asked. Her voice was firm, not unkind. I nodded, confused. She tilted her head, studying me like I was a puzzle she'd been hired to solve. "Your son left you something," she said. "I've been looking for you for 2 weeks." My chest tightened. "I don't understand." She reached into her coat and pulled out a manila envelope, worn at the edges, my name written across the front in Marcus's handwriting. I recognized it immediately. The slant of the letters, the way he pressed too hard with the pen. My hands shook as I took it. "He gave this to me 6 months before he died," the woman said. "Told me if anything ever happened to him, I was supposed to find you and make sure you got it. Took me a while to track you down." I stared at the envelope. "Who are you?" "I'm a lawyer." Was his lawyer. "He came to me last winter. Said he had a feeling something bad was coming and wanted to make sure you were taken care of." She paused. "He knew, William. He knew exactly what she'd do." My throat closed. I couldn't speak. The woman stepped back. "Open it when you're ready. And William?" I looked up. "He loved you more than anything. Don't forget that." She walked away, disappearing into the gray morning, and I sat there holding the envelope like it might explode. I didn't open it right away. I just held it, feeling the weight of it, the shape of whatever was inside. My son had been dead for 3 months, and somehow he was still looking out for me. I didn't know whether to cry or scream. The envelope sat on my lap for 20 minutes before I finally tore it open. Inside were 2 things: a single piece of paper, folded twice, and a legal document with Vanessa's address printed at the top. I unfolded the paper first. Marcus's handwriting again, messier this time, like he'd written it in a hurry. "Dad, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry I didn't get more time. I'm sorry I won't be there to take care of you the way you took care of me. But I need you to know something. I saw this coming. Not my death exactly, but the way Vanessa would handle it. She's strong, but she's also scared, and when she's scared, she pushes people away. I knew she'd push you out, so I made sure you'd have somewhere to go. The house is yours now, Dad. The deed's in this envelope. She doesn't know yet. My lawyer will explain everything. I love you. I'm proud of you. And I knew exactly what she'd do." I read it 3 times. Then I looked at the legal document. Deed of transfer. The house Vanessa and Marcus had lived in for 8 years. The house where my granddaughter learned to walk. Where Sunday dinners happened. Where I thought I'd never be welcome again. It was mine. Marcus had transferred ownership to me 6 months before he died, with a clause that activated only in the event of his death. Vanessa had no idea. I sat there staring at the paper, and for the first time in 37 days, I felt something other than emptiness. It wasn't relief. It wasn't joy. It was something stranger, like the ground had just shifted under me, and I didn't know whether I was about to fall or finally stand up straight. What would you have done if your son had done this for you? I didn't drive to the house right away. I sat in that parking lot for another hour, holding the deed like it might vanish if I blinked too hard. The paper felt expensive, official, stamped with seals and signatures I barely understood. My son's name at the bottom, dated 6 months before his heart gave out. He'd known. Somehow Marcus had looked at his wife, the woman he loved, the mother of his child, and predicted exactly how grief would turn her into someone who could throw me away. That knowledge sat heavy in my chest, heavier than hunger, heavier than the cold that had seeped into my joints from too many nights curled in a back seat. He'd protected me from beyond the grave, and I didn't know whether to feel grateful or heartbroken that he'd had to. The lawyer's business card was paper-clipped to the deed, Sharon Mendez, estate planning attorney. I called the number from the gas station payphone because my cell had been shut off weeks ago. She answered on the second ring. "Mr. Hayes," she said, like she'd been expecting me. "I assume you've read the documents." "I don't understand how this is legal," I said. My voice sounded hollow, unfamiliar. The house was in both their names. "It was," Sharon said, "but Marcus owned it before the marriage. When he married Vanessa, he added her to the title as a joint tenant, but he never removed his ability to transfer his share. 6 months ago, he came to me and executed a transfer on death deed, naming you as the beneficiary of his ownership interest. Upon his death, his 50% became yours automatically. Vanessa still owns her half, but you now own the other half, and as the majority decision maker on any sale or major decision, you have significant legal standing." I pressed my forehead against the cold metal of the phone booth. "So what does that mean?" "It means the house can't be sold without your consent. It means you have a legal right to live there. And it means Vanessa is going to be very, very surprised when she finds out. She doesn't know. She will when you tell her." Sharon paused. "Or when I do, if you'd prefer. Marcus left specific instructions. He wanted you taken care of, William. He knew she'd shut you out, and he made sure you'd have leverage." Leverage. The word tasted bitter. "This is going to destroy her." "Maybe. Sharon said. Or maybe it'll force her to face what she did. Either way, it's your choice how to proceed. You can move in tomorrow if you want. You can force a sale and take your half. You can negotiate. But you're not homeless anymore, Mr. Hayes. That's what Marcus wanted you to know. I thanked her and hung up. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely get the receiver back on the hook. A teenage kid waiting behind me gave me a weird look and I walked away. Back to the Camry, back to the only space that had been mine for over a month. I drove slow through the streets I used to know, past the diner where Marcus and I used to get pancakes on Saturday mornings, past the park where I taught him to ride a bike, past the elementary school my granddaughter attended. Everything looked the same, but I felt like a ghost drifting through a life that had moved on without me. When I finally pulled up to the house, the sun was starting to dip, casting long shadows across the lawn Marcus used to mow every Sunday. The grass was overgrown now, wild in patches, and the flower beds Vanessa used to tend were choked with weeds. The house looked tired. The blue paint was peeling near the shutters. One of the porch steps had a crack running through it. It looked like grief felt, like something that used to be cared for and wasn't anymore. I sat in the car for 10 minutes just staring. Vanessa's sedan was in the driveway. Lights were on inside. I could see shadows moving past the kitchen window. My granddaughter, probably. Maybe doing homework. Maybe eating dinner, living a life I'd been cut out of like a tumor. I thought about Marcus's note. I knew exactly what she'd do. He'd seen this coming, prepared for it, handed me the keys to a future I didn't know I'd need. And now I had a choice. I could walk up to that door, knock, and shatter whatever fragile piece Vanessa had built in the 3 months since she'd thrown me out. Or I could drive away, let her keep believing she'd won, keep sleeping in my car until my body gave out the way my sons had. What would you do if you held the deed to the place you'd been exiled from? I got out of the car. The evening air was cool, sharp in my lungs, and my legs felt unsteady as I walked up the driveway. Each step felt like crossing a border I wasn't supposed to cross. The porch creaked under my weight. I stood in front of the door, my hand raised to knock, and froze. I could hear voices inside. Vanessa's, low and steady, and my granddaughter's, higher, laughing about something I couldn't make out. The sound of it, normal, easy, untouched by the hell I'd been living, made something twist in my chest. I knocked. 3 times, firm, but not aggressive. The voices stopped. Footsteps approached. The door opened, and Vanessa stood there, backlit by the warm glow of the living room, her face going from confusion to shock to something colder in the span of 2 seconds. William. Her voice was flat. What are you doing here? I looked past her, into the house that used to welcome me, and saw my granddaughter peeking around the corner, her eyes wide. She didn't run to me. She just stared, like I was a stranger she vaguely remembered. I need to talk to you, I said. Vanessa's jaw tightened. I told you I needed space. I know what you told me. I pulled the deed from my jacket pocket, still folded, and held it up. But Marcus told me something different. Her eyes flicked to the paper, and for just a second I saw fear. What is that? It's the deed to this house, I said quietly. Marcus transferred his half to me 6 months before he died. I own 50% of this place, Vanessa. And I'm not leaving anymore. The color drained from her face. Behind her, my granddaughter took a step back, confused, scared. Vanessa's hand gripped the doorframe so hard her knuckles went white. You're lying. I'm not. I unfolded the deed and held it out. She didn't take it. She just stared at me like I'd pulled a knife. He wouldn't do that. He did. My voice cracked. Because he knew you'd throw me out. He knew you'd need someone to blame, and he knew it would be me. So he made sure I'd have somewhere to go when you were done grieving. Vanessa's breath came faster, shallow, her eyes filling with something I couldn't name. Rage, guilt, disbelief, all of it tangled together. You can't just show up here and... I'm not just showing up, I interrupted. I'm coming home. For a long moment, neither of us moved. The air between us felt like glass, fragile and sharp. Then Vanessa stepped back and slammed the door in my face. I stood there, listening to her footsteps retreat, listening to my granddaughter's small voice asking, "Mom, what's happening?" And Vanessa's muffled reply, too quiet to make out. I didn't knock again. I just turned around, walked back to my car and sat in the driver's seat with the deed still in my hand. I didn't win, not yet, but I wasn't invisible anymore. And that was something. Before I go any further, I need to ask, do you think I was wrong to show up like that? Drop a comment and let me know, because what happens next depends on a choice I'm still not sure was right. I slept in the car again that night, parked 2 blocks away from the house I now technically owned but couldn't enter. The deed sat on the passenger seat, glowing faintly in the streetlight like some kind of cursed artifact. I kept replaying the look on Vanessa's face when I told her, the way her expression had shifted from shock to betrayal, to something that looked almost like hatred. My son had given me a gift, but it felt more like a grenade with the pin already pulled. I couldn't stop wondering if he'd known it would come to this, if he'd understood that saving me might mean destroying whatever was left of his family. Around 3 in the morning, I gave up on sleep and drove to the only place that felt neutral, the cemetery where Marcus was buried. The gates were locked, but I parked outside and walked along the fence line until I found the gap I'd used before, a section where the iron had rusted and bent just enough for an old man to squeeze through. The grave was in the newer section, under a maple tree that was just starting to turn red with autumn. The headstone was simple, black granite with his name and dates, and a line Vanessa had chosen, "Beloved husband and father." Nothing about beloved son. I'd noticed that at the funeral but hadn't said anything. Now it felt like another erasure, another way I'd been written out of the story. I sat down on the damp grass, my back against the headstone, and talked to my dead son the way I'd been doing for 3 months. "I don't know what you wanted me to do with this, Marcus," I said quietly. I showed her the deed, and she looked at me like I was the enemy. "Maybe I am. Maybe you made a mistake thinking I could handle this." The wind rustled through the maple leaves. Somewhere in the distance, a car horn blared. "Your daughter won't even look at me anymore. Vanessa's probably telling her right now that I'm trying to steal the house, that I'm some kind of villain. And maybe she's right. Maybe I should have just stayed gone." I pulled my knees up to my chest, feeling every one of my 68 years in the ache of my joints. "But I'm so tired, son. I'm tired of sleeping in that car. I'm tired of washing my face in gas station sinks. I'm tired of being invisible. You gave me a way out, and I took it. And now I don't know if that makes me desperate or cruel." No answer came. Just the quiet of the cemetery, the kind of silence that makes you feel like the only person left in the world. I stayed until dawn started to break, until the groundskeeper's truck rumbled past the gates and I had to slip back through the fence before someone noticed me. I called Sharon Mendez from a coffee shop that opened at 6, using the last few dollars I had to buy a small black coffee I didn't really want. She answered on the 4th ring, sounding more awake than anyone had a right to be that early. "William, I was wondering when I'd hear from you." "I told her," I said. "Last night. Showed her the deed." "And?" She slammed the door in my face. Sharon was quiet for a moment. "That's not unexpected. She's processing. This changes everything for her. Financially, emotionally. She probably feels ambushed." "I feel like I ambushed her." "You didn't," Sharon said firmly. "Marcus did this. You're just the recipient. There's a difference." I wrapped my hand around the warm coffee cup, letting the heat seep into my cold fingers. "What happens now?" "Now you decide what you want. You have options, William. You can file for partition, force a sale of the house and take your half of the proceeds. You can negotiate with Vanessa, offer to sign over your share in exchange for compensation or other terms. Or you can assert your right to occupy the property. As a 50% owner, you're legally entitled to live there. Even if she doesn't want me there. Even then, though I'll warn you it won't be pleasant, Co-ownership disputes can get ugly fast, especially when there's this much emotional history. I took a sip of coffee. It was bitter, scalding, exactly what I needed. What would you do? Sharon hesitated. Honestly, I'd think about what Marcus really wanted, not just legally but emotionally. He didn't do this to punish Vanessa. He did it to protect you. So ask yourself, does being protected mean taking the house? Or does it mean having the power to choose what happens next? That stayed with me long after I hung up. Power. I'd spent 3 months powerless, at the mercy of other people's decisions, other people's grief. Now I had leverage, and I didn't know what to do with it except hold it like a weapon I didn't want to use. I spent the rest of the morning in the coffee shop nursing refills the barista probably wasn't supposed to give me but did anyway. Maybe because I looked like someone who needed the kindness. Around 11, my phone, which I'd managed to charge in the bathroom outlet, buzzed with a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer. William Hayes? A man's voice, official sounding. Yes? This is Detective Raymond Call with the County Sheriff's Office. I need you to come down to the station. We have some questions regarding a property dispute. My stomach dropped. What kind of questions? Your daughter-in-law filed a report this morning claiming you're harassing her and trespassing on her property. We'd like to hear your side before this escalates further. I sat in the detective's office for 45 minutes. The deed spread out on his desk while he read through it with the slow, methodical attention of someone who didn't want to make a mistake. Detective Call was younger than me by maybe 20 years, with gray starting at his temples and the kind of tired eyes that come from seeing too much human ugliness. When he finally looked up, his expression was unreadable. This appears legitimate, he said. You understand what this means legally? I'm starting to. It means Mrs. Hayes doesn't have grounds for a trespassing complaint. You're a co-owner. You have as much right to be on that property as she does. He leaned back in his chair. But I'm going to be straight with you, Mr. Hayes. Just because you're legally in the right doesn't mean this is going to end well. I've seen family disputes like this before. They get nasty. People get hurt, sometimes physically. Is that really what you want? I looked down at my hands, rough and stained from years of factory work, now just tools with nothing left to build. I don't want anything except to not sleep in my car anymore. Call's expression softened slightly. Where are you staying now? The car. For how long? 38 days. He exhaled slowly, rubbing his face. Jesus. Okay. Look, I can't make her let you in and I can't make you leave. What I can do is suggest you two figure out some kind of arrangement before this turns into something nobody can walk back from. You got a lawyer? I've got the one who drew up the deed. Good. Use her. And Mr. Hayes. I looked up. Don't go to that house alone again. Not until you've got a legal agreement or a police escort. I don't know your daughter-in-law, but grief makes people unpredictable. Protect yourself. I left the station feeling more lost than when I'd arrived. Legally, I had rights. Practically, I was still homeless. And emotionally, I was stuck in a nightmare where my son's final act of love had turned into the thing tearing his family apart. That night, I parked 3 blocks from the house again, far enough that Vanessa wouldn't see me, but close enough that I could watch the lights go on and off, could imagine my granddaughter brushing her teeth, Vanessa tucking her in, the rhythms of a life I used to be part of. Around 9, my phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. This is Vanessa. We need to talk. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., the coffee shop on Maple Street. Come alone. I stared at the message for a long time. It could be an olive branch, it could be a trap, it could be the beginning of something or the end of everything, but it was the first time she'd reached out, and that had to mean something. I texted back one word. Okay. Then I locked the car doors, pulled my jacket tight around me, and tried to sleep, knowing that tomorrow everything would change one way or another. If you were in my position, would you trust her enough to show up? Let me know in the comments because I'm still not sure I made the right choice. I arrived at the coffee shop 20 minutes early, which was stupid because it gave me too much time to second-guess everything. The place was small, local, the kind with mismatched furniture and chalkboard menus that tried too hard to be quirky. I ordered a coffee I couldn't afford and sat in the back corner where I could see the door, where I could watch Vanessa come in and read her face before she saw mine. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I wrapped them around the cup and told myself it was just the caffeine, but I knew better. This was fear, plain and simple. Fear that she'd come in angry, that she'd brought a lawyer, that this was some kind of ambush designed to strip away the only leverage I had left. Fear that my son's gift would turn into the thing that destroyed whatever fragile thread still connected me to my granddaughter. At 2 o'clock exactly, Vanessa walked through the door. She was alone. That was the first surprise. The second was how terrible she looked. Hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, no makeup, dark circles under her eyes that looked like bruises. She'd lost weight since the funeral, enough that her clothes hung loose on her frame. She looked like someone who hadn't slept properly in months, and I realized with a sick feeling that we probably looked like a matched set. 2 people hollowed out by the same loss. She saw me and walked over without ordering anything. Sat down across from me with her purse clutched in her lap like a shield. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. "You look awful," she said finally. "So do you." Her mouth twitched, almost a smile, gone before it fully formed. "I didn't know where you were. After I made you leave, I mean. I didn't know you were sleeping in your car." "You didn't ask." "No," she said quietly. "I didn't." She looked down at her hands, twisting her wedding ring around her finger, a nervous habit I'd seen 1,000 times at Sunday dinners. "I was so angry, William. I'm still angry. At everything. At God, at the universe, at Marcus for dying and leaving me alone with a 7-year-old who keeps asking when Daddy's coming home, and you." Her voice cracked. "You looked so much like him. Same eyes, same way of standing with your hands in your pockets. Every time I saw you, it was like the wound opened fresh and I couldn't breathe. So I made you leave because that was easier than dealing with the fact that my husband was dead and never coming back." I set my coffee down, afraid I'd crush the cup. "You could have just told me that." "I know." She wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand. "I know. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, William. But then you showed up with that deed. And I felt betrayed all over again. Like Marcus didn't trust me. Like he thought I was some kind of monster who'd throw you away, and the worst part is he was right. Before I continue, you need to subscribe to Deserved Revenge because what I'm about to reveal will shock you. Hit that subscribe button now." The silence stretched between us, heavy with 3 months of grief and guilt and words we should have said earlier. I thought about Marcus, about the fact that he'd predicted this exact conversation, had known his wife well enough to see both her breaking point and her capacity for regret. "He didn't think you were a monster," I said finally. "He thought you were human. He knew grief makes people do things they wouldn't normally do. That's why he set this up. Not to punish you, but to make sure I'd be okay when you couldn't handle having me around." Vanessa's face crumpled. "I threw you out like garbage. You're his father. You raised him alone after his mom died, worked 2 jobs to put him through college, and I threw you out." "You were drowning," I said. "People who are drowning can't save anyone else." She pulled a tissue from her purse and pressed it to her eyes. When she looked up again, her expression had shifted into something harder, more determined. "I talked to a lawyer this morning. He explained what Marcus did, how the deed works. He said you could force me to sell the house." "I could." "Are you going to?" I looked at this woman my son had loved, who'd given me Sunday dinners and called me dad, who'd fallen apart so completely that she'd pushed away the only person who understood her loss. I thought about the house, about my granddaughter's bedroom with the glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling that Marcus and I had put up together. I thought about leverage and power and what it means to use either one. "No," I said. "I'm not going to force anything. But I need a place to live, Vanessa. I can't keep sleeping in my car. My back is destroyed. I'm running out of money, and I'm too old to start over from nothing." She nodded slowly. What if you moved into the garage apartment? I blinked. I'd forgotten about the garage apartment, a small studio space above the two-car garage that Marcus had converted years ago, thinking they might rent it out for extra income but never did. It had a bathroom, a kitchenette, maybe 400 square feet total. You'd be okay with that? I don't know if okay is the right word, Vanessa said, but it's better than you living in your car, and maybe… She stopped, swallowed hard. Maybe Lily needs to see her grandfather. Maybe I've been selfish keeping her from you because I was too broken to handle my own feelings. Lily, my granddaughter. I hadn't heard Vanessa say her name in months. Does she ask about me? Every day. Vanessa's voice was barely a whisper. She asks if you're mad at her, if that's why you don't come around anymore. I told her you were traveling, that you needed time away. I didn't know what else to say. The anger I'd been carrying for 3 months started to crack, and underneath it was just grief. The same grief Vanessa had been drowning in. The same grief that had made both of us do terrible things to each other. I'd like to see her, I said, if that's okay. Vanessa nodded. The apartment needs cleaning. It's full of boxes and old furniture, but if you want to move in, we can clear it out this week. I can clear it myself. No, she said firmly. Let me help. It's the least I can do. We sat there for another few minutes, not quite comfortable, but not hostile either. Just two people trying to figure out how to exist in the wreckage of the same loss. When Vanessa finally stood to leave, she paused, her hand on the back of the chair. Marcus knew me better than I knew myself, she said. He knew I'd push you away, and he made sure you'd have a way back. I hated him for that when I first found out, but now… She trailed off, shaking her head. Now I think maybe he saved us both. She left before I could respond, and I sat alone in the coffee shop, staring at my cold coffee, feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Not happiness, not relief, but something close to hope. Maybe Marcus hadn't just given me a house. Maybe he'd given me a chance to rebuild what grief had broken. 2 days later, I moved into the garage apartment. Vanessa helped, along with a couple of her friends who didn't ask questions, but looked at me with the kind of careful kindness people reserve for the recently rescued. The space was small, musty, filled with the ghosts of storage and neglect, but it had a bed and a shower and a door I could lock. It was mine. That first night I lay on the narrow bed and stared at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the main house through the thin walls. Vanessa's voice reading a bedtime story, Lily's laughter, the creak of floorboards as they moved through their nighttime routine. I wasn't part of it. Not yet. But I was close enough to hear it. Close enough to remember what family sounded like. Around 9, there was a soft knock on the apartment door. I opened it to find Lily standing there in her pajamas, clutching a stuffed rabbit that had seen better days. Vanessa stood behind her, one hand on her shoulder. Lily wanted to say goodnight. Vanessa said quietly. My granddaughter looked up at me with Marcus's eyes, and for a second I couldn't breathe. Hi, Grandpa, she said, her voice small and uncertain. I missed you. I knelt down, my knees protesting, and pulled her into a hug. She smelled like strawberry shampoo and childhood, and when she wrapped her thin arms around my neck, I felt something inside me that had been frozen for months finally start to thaw. I missed you too, sweetheart, I managed. So much. She pulled back and looked at me seriously. Are you going to stay now? I glanced up at Vanessa, who was watching us with tears streaming down her face. Then I looked back at Lily and nodded. Yeah, I said. I'm going to stay. She smiled, gap-toothed and bright, and ran back to her mother. Vanessa mouthed thank you over Lily's head, and then they were gone, back into the house, back into the life I'd been exiled from, and was now, impossibly, being invited back into. I closed the door and sat on the edge of the bed, my son's final gift finally making sense. He hadn't just given me a place to live. He'd given me a way home. Do you think forgiveness can really happen after betrayal like this? Or are some wounds too deep? I'm reading and replying to every comment under this post. The first week in the garage apartment felt like living in a waiting room between two versions of my life. I'd wake up each morning to the sound of Vanessa's car pulling out of the driveway, taking Lily to school, and I'd lie there listening to the engine fade, wondering if this fragile piece we'd built would last or shatter the moment one of us said the wrong thing. The apartment was sparse: a bed, a small table, 2 chairs I'd salvaged from the basement, a microwave that hummed too loud. But it had heat. It had running water. It had a door that locked from the inside, which meant more to me than I could articulate to anyone who hadn't spent 38 nights sleeping in a car, always half awake, always listening for footsteps or voices that might mean danger. I kept the deed in the top drawer of the bedside table, folded carefully in its envelope. Some nights I'd take it out and read it again, tracing my son's signature with my finger, trying to understand the man who'd loved me enough to see the future and protect me from it. He'd known Vanessa would break. He'd known I'd have nowhere to go. And he'd known that the only way to save us both was to force us back together with something neither of us could ignore. On the 8th day, Vanessa knocked on my door just after sunset. I was heating up soup in the microwave, the kind that comes in a can and tastes like salted cardboard but fills the emptiness. She stood in the doorway holding a covered dish, steam rising from beneath the aluminum foil. "I made too much lasagna," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Thought you might want some." We both knew she hadn't made too much. She'd made it for me. But we played the game anyway, the small fiction that made kindness easier to accept. "Thank you," I said, taking the dish. The weight of it, the warmth seeping through the foil into my hands, felt like more than food. It felt like an apology still being written. She lingered in the doorway. "Lily wants to know if you'll come to her soccer game Saturday." I told her I'd ask. My throat tightened. "I'd like that." "It's at 10, the field behind the elementary school." She paused. "Marcus used to coach her team. They retired his number at the beginning of the season. It's been hard for her, going back without him." I can imagine. Vanessa's eyes finally met mine, and in them I saw the same exhaustion I felt, the same weight of carrying grief that never got lighter, just more familiar. "I don't know how to do this, William. How to be around you without seeing him. How to let Lily get attached to you again when I'm terrified something else will happen, and she'll lose someone else she loves." "I'm not going anywhere," I said quietly. "Not unless you ask me to leave again." She flinched. "I won't. I promise I won't." "Then we'll figure it out. One day at a time." She nodded, wiping quickly at her eyes, and left without another word. I ate the lasagna slowly, savoring every bite, and for the first time in months, food tasted like something other than survival. Saturday came cold and bright, the kind of autumn morning that makes everything look sharper, more vivid. I walked to the soccer field because the Camry had finally given up 2 days earlier, the engine seizing with a sound like metal screaming. I'd had it towed to a junkyard and got $75 for it, which felt both like nothing and like the end of an era. The field was already crowded with parents in folding chairs, kids in mismatched uniforms running drills, coaches shouting encouragement that carried across the cold air. I spotted Vanessa on the sideline, wrapped in Marcus's old jacket, the one with his name embroidered on the back from his college baseball days. Lily was on the field, tiny in her oversized jersey, number 7, Marcus's number. When she saw me approaching, her whole face lit up. She broke from the warm-up and ran over, crashing into my legs with the full force of a 7-year-old who hasn't yet learned to hold back her joy. "You came!" she shouted. "I wasn't sure you'd come." I knelt down, ignoring the protest in my knees, and hugged her tight. "I wouldn't miss it for anything." She pulled back, grinning. "I'm playing forward today. Coach says I'm getting really good at corner kicks." "Your dad taught you those?" Her smile faltered just slightly. "Yeah. Before he—" She stopped, glanced at her mother, then back at me. "Before he got sick." Sick. That's what Vanessa had told her. Not dead, not gone, just sick, like it was something temporary that might eventually get better. I didn't correct her. That wasn't my place. He'd be really proud of you, I said instead. I know, she said simply, and ran back to her team. I stood next to Vanessa, and we watched in silence as the game started. Lily was good, quick, fearless, the kind of player who went for every ball like it might be her last chance. Twice she nearly scored, and both times Vanessa jumped to her feet, shouting encouragement, her voice cracking with an emotion that had nothing to do with soccer. In the second half, Lily took a corner kick that curved perfectly into the box. Another girl headed it in, and the small crowd erupted. Lily turned, searching the sideline, and when she found us, found me, she pointed, the way Marcus used to point at me in the stands when he hit a home run in high school. The gesture was so familiar, so achingly identical, that I felt my chest cave in. Vanessa saw it too. I heard her breath catch, felt her hand suddenly grip my arm, squeezing tight like she was drowning, and I was the only solid thing. We stood like that, holding each other up, while our granddaughter and daughter celebrated on the field, and Marcus's ghost danced in the cold autumn air between us. After the game, Lily begged for ice cream despite the cold. Vanessa gave in easily, the way parents do when they're trying to make up for losses their children don't fully understand yet. We went to the place on Main Street that had been there since Marcus was a kid, the one with the hand-painted sign and 50 flavors. Lily ordered chocolate chip, Vanessa got vanilla, and I got nothing because I was still counting every dollar, still not sure when the next one would come. But Vanessa ordered me a small coffee without asking, and when the teenager behind the counter handed it to me, she just said, "It's on me," in a voice that didn't allow for argument. We sat in a booth by the window, Lily between us, chattering about the game, about school, about a boy named Trevor, who'd pulled her hair at recess and whether that meant he liked her or was just mean. Normal things, small things, the kind of things I'd missed desperately without realizing how much. Then Lily went quiet, staring at her ice cream. When she looked up, her eyes were too serious for 7 years old. "Grandpa, are you going to die like Daddy did?" The question hit like a fist. Vanessa froze, spoon halfway to her mouth. I set down my coffee carefully, buying time, trying to find words that were honest, but not terrifying. "Everyone dies eventually, sweetheart," I said slowly. "But I'm not planning on it anytime soon. I'm going to be around for a long time." "But you don't know that," she pressed. "Daddy didn't know either. He was just coaching soccer and then he was gone." Her voice cracked. "What if you're just here and then gone too?" Vanessa reached for her daughter, but Lily pulled back, tears spilling over. "I don't want anyone else to leave," she said, her voice rising. "I don't want Grandpa to leave, and I don't want you to leave, and I don't want to be alone." The words came out in a rush, dissolving into sobs, and suddenly we weren't in an ice cream shop anymore. We were in the center of a grief that had been festering in this child for 3 months, dressed up as soccer games and homework and normal routines, but underneath it all, she was terrified. Vanessa slid out of the booth and pulled Lily into her arms, holding her while she cried, whispering reassurances that I couldn't hear but could feel, promises we couldn't really make, comfort we couldn't guarantee, love that was the only solid thing any of us had left. I sat across from them, useless, my own eyes burning, and thought about Marcus, about how he'd tried to protect all of us and ended up leaving a wound so deep we were all still figuring out how to breathe around it. Eventually, Lily's sobs quieted. Vanessa wiped her daughter's face with a napkin, kissed her forehead, and met my eyes over Lily's head. In that look was everything we hadn't said. Apology, forgiveness, shared grief, tentative hope. We were broken, all 3 of us. But we were broken together, and maybe that was enough to start building something new. If you're still with me, you won't believe what happens next. Drop a comment below with your country so I know you're here. We left the ice cream shop as the sun started to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that Marcus would have called fishing light, the kind of evening where everything feels both ending and beginning at once. Vanessa drove us home. I still thought of it as her home, not mine, even though legally half of it belonged to me now. When we pulled into the driveway, Lily asked if I wanted to come inside and watch a movie. "It's family movie night," she said. "We do it every Friday, but we can do it today instead since you're here." I looked at Vanessa, asking permission without words. She hesitated, just for a second, then nodded. "Come on. We're watching something animated and probably annoying, but that's the rule." Lily picks. We went inside, into the house I'd been exiled from, and Lily immediately started building a nest of blankets on the couch. Vanessa made popcorn in the microwave, the smell filling the kitchen with something warm and familiar. I sat in the armchair that used to be mine on Sunday visits, and when the movie started, something with talking animals and a predictable plot, Lily climbed off the couch and curled up against my side, her head on my shoulder, her thumb sneaking toward her mouth in a habit she was supposed to be too old for but wasn't. Vanessa watched from the couch, her expression unreadable. Halfway through the movie, Lily fell asleep, her breathing deep and even against my chest. Vanessa got up quietly and draped a blanket over both of us. "Thank you for coming today," she whispered. "For being here. For not giving up on us." "Marcus didn't give me that option," I whispered back. She smiled, sad but genuine. "No, I guess he didn't." She sat back down, and we finished the movie in silence, the three of us breathing in the same space, held together by loss and love and a deed that had forced us to face each other instead of running. When the credits rolled, I carefully shifted Lily into Vanessa's arms. She stirred but didn't wake, and Vanessa carried her upstairs to bed. I let myself out quietly, walking across the dark yard to the garage apartment, and stood for a moment looking back at the house. Lights glowed in the windows, shadows moved behind curtains. Somewhere inside, Vanessa was tucking Lily in, probably whispering the same reassurances she'd whispered in the ice cream shop, building a safety that none of us could promise, but all of us desperately needed. I went inside and pulled out the deed one last time. Read my son's note again. I knew exactly what she'd do. He'd known. And he'd known that the only way to save us was to bind us together with something legal and unbreakable, to force us into proximity until we remembered that we were family, that grief doesn't have to mean isolation, that sometimes love looks like giving someone leverage and trusting them not to use it as a weapon. I folded the note, put it back in the drawer, and lay down on the narrow bed. Outside, the night was quiet. Inside, for the first time in months, so was I. Here's what I learned through all of this. Grief will make you do things you never thought you were capable of. Pushing away the people who love you, protecting yourself by inflicting pain on others, choosing isolation because it feels safer than risking more loss. But love, real love, doesn't let you stay isolated forever. It finds ways back in, through deeds and lasagna and soccer games, through grandchildren who ask impossible questions, and daughters-in-law who are brave enough to say they're sorry. Marcus gave me more than a house. He gave me a second chance at family, at belonging, at being seen. And he did it knowing I might never understand why until I'd lived through the hardest part. The moral is simple. Sometimes the greatest gift isn't what someone gives you, it's what they refuse to let you lose. Marcus refused to let me lose my family even when his wife wanted to push me away, even when I'd given up on myself. He built a bridge back when I couldn't see the shore anymore, and that bridge, that stubborn, legally binding act of love, saved all of us. If this story meant something to you, if you've ever felt thrown away or forgotten, I want you to know you're not alone. Subscribe so you don't miss the next story, and leave a comment telling me about a time someone refused to let you give up. I'm reading every single one, and your story might be the next one I tell. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And thank you for reminding me that even in our darkest moments, we're never as alone as we think we are.